Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions here to talk about The X-Files, Season 1, Episode 4, Conduit. The episode's description reads as follows. Mulder becomes obsessed with solving a case that closely parallels an encounter he experienced as a child. The episode was written by Alex Ganza and Howard Gordon. Ganza would write 5 episodes in total for the series. The best of the bunch would be Fallen Angel, and he would serve as a supervising producer on the first season of the show, minus the pilot. Howard Gordon, meanwhile, would write 17 episodes spread over 4 seasons of the show, and would serve 48 episodes as a supervising producer, and another 24 as an executive producer. The episode was directed by Daniel Sackheim, his second effort on the series, the last being Deep Throat. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give me a listen. Secondly, if you are listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow, and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to my channel. Okay, so, a couple days ago was the 30th anniversary of The X-Files. That makes me feel just a little bit old. And I guess to celebrate the 30-year anniversary, we're looking at Conduit. Rewatching this episode, it's fine. Admittedly, a lot of my personal opinions on this episode stems from the fact that a lot of this has become cliche within the series. 10, 11 years worth of the show and the movie basically repeated some of the things that we saw in this episode. Now, that's not necessarily the episode's fault because, in a lot of ways, it's the first one to do it. But, nevertheless, it kind of colors my opinion on the episode, as a lot of things that happen have become practical cliches within the series by the time it's concluded. Nevertheless, while I consider this the weakest of the 4 episodes that I've taken a look at so far, it is also a very important piece of Mulder's overall story, and a chapter that is basically unskippable. You definitely have to watch this episode. But the episode kind of looks curiously older than the previous episodes, and from it, I gather that I'm not really a fan of Alex Ganza as a writer. Howard Gordon, who stayed with the show longer, has a better track record. There just seems to be something missing here. There's a lack of banter between Mulder and Scully that is quite frequently, even when episodes are mediocre, the highlight of episodes. Now, I get that this is a more serious look at Mulder, but in the future, even serious episodes still have a sense of humor that seems to be lacking here. It's important to get a look at what drives Mulder with the disappearance of his sister, but I feel like there are better episodes that cover the same ground. I'm looking at Paper Hearts from Season 4. And the cliches I talked about before even cropped up in the second X-Files movie, I Want to Believe. Anyway, we open this episode up with a child calling for his mom, and the mother, Darlene, comes running out of the trailer and looks at the sky, yelling, "Ruby!" And it's a very odd opening. And then we cut to our credits. Darlene is played by Carrie Snodgrass, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. She had an appearance in The West Wing in the 4th season that I remember her very well in, and she was nominated for an Academy Award. According to Internet Movie Database, she was actually the first actress to appear in the series that had been award nominated. She had 72 acting credits in total before she died on April 1st, 2004 at the age of 58. When we come back from the credits, Scully is talking to Section Chief Blevins, who we will not see again until Season 4, the Season 4 finale, Jessamine. Mulder wants to attach a case number to a tabloid story, and Blevins is skeptical, but he's talking to Scully about it before deciding whether to deny Mulder's request. And I'm kind of curious why not ask Mulder about this himself. Blevins isn't lacking for compassion in this scene, as he brings up Mulder's sister's file, which Scully is very aware of. She warned about this in the pilot episode. Scully suggests she talked to Mulder first, thinking he probably has a good reason. Internet Movie Database says that in the file about Samantha that Blevins shows her, the complete name of Samantha is Samantha T. Mulder, but that will later be contradicted in the series, as her second name was Anne. So Scully ends up going to talk to Mulder, and this conversation reveals that Darlene herself had been a witness and a possible abductee in the past, and that is enough for Scully to tag along on this wild adventure. Darlene is welcoming of the agents at the start, which is a stark contrast to her attitude at the end of the episode. Mulder sees a picture of young Ruby, which makes him think of his sister, as Scully watches him reflect. After a conversation with Darlene, Mulder goes and talks to the younger brother, Kevin. And Kevin is played by Joel Palmer, who has 31 acting credits, and he would have a second appearance on the show in the second season episode, The Calasari. I'm not even sure that I'm pronouncing that right at all. Probably not. Generally speaking, I am not the best pronunciation guy. He's in front of a TV that's playing static, and this is reminiscent of Poltergeist, the movie. And he's writing ones and zeros on a piece of paper. That kind of reminds me of a Bruce Willis film, Mercury Rising, which I am certain came after this. We have a conversation with the town sheriff, who isn't totally pleasant, but not as standoffish as a lot of law enforcement types are in the series. He thinks something bad happening to Ruby was inevitable, and if Darlene needs to make up stories to get over that, then whatever. He's played by Michael Cavanaugh, and he has 103 appearances for himself, including an appearance on Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. Leaving the office, they are left a note on the car, which leads them to a library and a girl who wants to talk about Ruby. The girl claims that she got pregnant by a guy named Greg, and they were planning to leave town. She mentions a pub that he worked at. The agents get distracted, and she takes that moment to escape from the agents. Mulder and Scully try to find her, but she's gone, and this little moment is a little bit overplayed, in my mind. They go to a pub and talk to the biker type, bartender played by Donald Gibbs, who is, he was actually in Bloodsport. Greg hasn't shown up for work in a while, and if the agents manage to track him down, he's fired, so he might as well not bother. Mulder asks him about his tattoo, which is of a flying saucer, and Mulder decides to play the skeptic, pretending like he doesn't believe, and goading the bartender, saying he thinks that the UFOs and the aliens are a bunch of nonsense, while Scully looks at Mulder like he's crazy, wondering what he's doing. And I'm actually kind of curious about this interesting tack that Mulder takes here, because wouldn't he get the same information out of this biker if he correctly tells him that he believes, instead of playing the skeptic? And I'm not quite sure why, but it is definitely interesting to note. But Mulder takes this tack, it works. He warns about Lake Okoboji, and I'm going to mispronounce that or say a different pronunciation every single time, I almost guarantee that. The bartender ends up revealing a burned ear that he got from Lake Okoboji, which is a hotbed for UFO activity. At their motel, late at night, the NSA barges into Scully's room, where she's sleeping, and demands to know where Mulder is. They talk to him while he's shirtless. Couldn't they let him put a shirt on first before having this conversation? Or did we just want to have a good look at David Duchovny? I'm sure the women in the audience, and maybe a few men, enjoyed that. They want to know where he got the picture of the ones and zeros. Mulder isn't forthcoming, and the agent ends up threatening him. It's eventually divulged that it was a transmission from a defense satellite. Mulder continues to play dumb, but I guess Scully ends up telling them anyway, and Mulder thinks that was the wrong call. They end up taking the boy, though I guess they are satisfied he isn't a threat, so they are going to end up releasing him. The agents talk to another agent who reveals that the transmissions included snippets of a classical music and Shakespeare and the Quran. So what you're telling me is Kevin is actually a terrorist. Anyway, Ruby and Kevin's mother is pissed at Mulder and Scully and wants them to leave her alone. They go to Lake Okoboji because Mulder thinks Kevin is a conduit to what or whoever took Ruby. Scully says she knows why this is important to him, but there's no evidence of an abduction. At the lake, they encounter some dogs, or wolves perhaps. Mulder fires a gun in the air to scare them away, and this is the first time he's firing his gun in this series. They were interested in a shallow grave that Mulder starts to try and dig up, despite Scully objecting that this isn't proper procedure. But Mulder must know if it's Ruby because he's identified her with his sister. This is one of the scenes I'm talking about that are kind of cliche within the series. We see this play out at least a few times throughout. Though at this point, it's not a series cliche. It turns out to be Ruby's missing boyfriend instead of Ruby herself, Greg. And who's the natural suspect? The girl from the library, which they discover via a handwritten note which matches her handwriting that invited Mulder and Scully to the library. The girl's name is Tessa. Mulder and Scully interrogate her, and basically Mulder plays bad cop, and we find out that Tessa is actually the pregnant one, and they suspect Greg was the father. Mulder accuses her of killing both Greg and Ruby, but Ruby wasn't there, and it seems like she is in fact the killer of Greg. Scully thinks the case is cracked. It's time to go home, but Mulder doesn't think so. He wants to go talk to the boy, despite the fact that the mother doesn't want him anywhere near them. Scully throws his sister in his face again, which only serves to annoy Mulder. Mulder says he still wants to find a missing girl, and he's not going to give up on her. She can help or not. They end up going back to the house, and no one is home. We see more ones and zeros on paper from the boy, and they look at it from a higher angle, and it happens to be ones and zeros made into a picture of Ruby. And this is according to Internet Movie Database, this little bit of trivia. The huge portrait of Ruby that Kevin draws was originally done via a computer printout. However, it looked a little too neat, so art department writer Vivian Nishi painstakingly wrote out all the ones and zeros by hand. This took her several days for a shot that lasted a few seconds on the screen. Back at Lake Okoboji, the agents are logging a lot of miles on their rental today. Mulder tells a story about his ritual as a kid regarding his sister, and mentions that he still walks into the room and sees his sister abducted every single day of his life. Mulder happens upon Darlene's trailer. They find Darlene, but not Kevin. Kevin is in the middle of the field. We see bright lights in the distance. Mulder runs to the boy. A bunch of bikers come out of nowhere. Mulder falls to the ground, protecting the boy, and the boy ends up declaring Ruby is back. Mulder doesn't think so, but Scully calls, and sure enough, Ruby is in fact back. But she is not doing so well. At the hospital, she's in a coma, but she's awake now. We hear some medical jargon. Mulder and Scully talk to Ruby, but Ruby won't reveal where she's been. Darlene asks to speak to the agents, and tells them it's best to put this all behind them. Darlene doesn't want Ruby talking to them, doesn't think it will do her any favors, and Mulder ends up losing this argument. We end the episode listening to Mulder's hypnosis session, with Scully as she looks at the file of Mulder's sister. Mulder sits in a church, looking at his sister's photo and crying, and he says on the tape recorder, the voice in his head is telling him not to be afraid, that no harm will come to her, and one day she will be returned to him. The doctor asks, "Do you believe the voice?" And Mulder answers, "I want to believe." Internet Movie Database says that this is the first time that Mulder will say this line, and that's a very haunting moment to close out this episode, in a mostly kind of mediocre episode. Some nice moments, but this episode really hasn't aged very well, in my opinion. Though, I might be at odds with the fandom here, because everything that I've seen indicates that the fandom itself likes this episode very much. And I guess at one point, so did I. I just feel differently watching it today. Anyway, that's all I got for you for this video. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Core Productions Facebook page. You can buy me a copy, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. Myself, Stacy's not involved in this. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Core Productions, signing off.